Good evening, City of Clear Lake Shores City Council regular meeting, June 15, 2021 at 6:30. All members of council are present, including Katie Rutherford, who is here representing our attorney for the city. We have a quorum. Item number 2, Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the Texas flag. I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. First, we have item number 3, which is public hearing. Item number A, which is violation of ordinance regarding junked vehicle located at property 15 Tyndall, Clear Lake Shores, Texas 77565. Anybody would like to speak on the behalf of that item is welcome to approach the podium. And if you could state your name and address, please. Yep, go ahead.
This paperwork that says that on 5/11 it came to my home without a warrant, came onto my property, looked around my property, and said I have vehicles that's unregistered, which is a lie. On 5/3, I have documentation here from Texas Department of Transportation that says I register all my vehicles. So on 5/11, it was said that my vehicles are not registered. And on 5/3, the state of Texas acknowledges that they are registered. So I have a serious problem with this. I get a letter threatening that they're going to take my items and crush them up. I've been here for 20 years. I've never done anything to anybody. I'm a school principal where I have to do fairness all day, and then I come back here and I get a man come to my house on my property, because I have cameras everywhere because of the harassment I've had all the years, saying that my vehicles are not registered. Texas Department of Transportation said they are registered. I have my proof right here. I asked him if he has any proof that they're not registered. He said he scanned them like a police officer. I want to see a scanner on his clipboard. There's nothing on a clipboard that scanned my license and said they're illegal. That's just one issue I have. The second issue I have is I've been going through this for years. My neighbors have not had this problem. I have a neighbor on one side had to have a registered vehicle in 4 years. I have another neighbor on the other side, 10 years, no registered vehicle. But I get threatened at my home, and I've been here for 20 years, saying that they're going to take my stuff. So I got to be fair. When I prosecute kids at school, because I'm a high school principal, when I prosecute kids, I have proof. I don't just go in on somebody's word or yes or lie, which this is. I go in on proof. I have proof. When I prosecute, I have proof. But there's no proof here. I have the documents right here.
Okay.
So my question is, why is it that me, and I know why, some people can't afford to live here, they want to attack you, I get that. But it's always me and the other brown people, or the poor, they're minorities too around here, nobody poor in this island. So the minorities, every year got problems, but the neighbors, no problem. No problem. Why is that? It's getting old. It's getting real old. I've sat right there before. I've been here for years. I've sat in your seats. I know several people in here. And I keep doing this every year? Explain that to me, sir. Why is that?
It's a public hearing. We're just,
yeah.
If you're done.
I know. I'm done. But I have my proof right here.
Okay.
Come to my property, it's going to be a very serious problem. Very serious problem. I have my proof right here.
And we'll take it up with the building inspector. Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else like to speak on behalf of item A, public hearing? Having none, we'll move to item B. This is, ordinance revisions amending section 3893, permit procedures, section 70 to 36, form and content of final plat, section 70 to 37, planning commission final plat reviews, section 7049, development plat required, section 7050, standards of approval, section 6650, drainage requirements, section 6651, definitions of drainage requirements, section 6652, drainage requirement for building lots within the residential and neighborhood commercial districts, section 6653, drainage requirement for building lots with commercial districts, section 6655, pre-development building permits and fill permits. At this time, we'll open it up at 6:37 for public hearing. Anybody want to speak on public hearing?
I may have to hold it. My name is Georgette South. I'm a resident of 133 East Shore. My husband and I also own South Custom Concepts, which is a custom home builder, and we built many homes here in Clear Lake Shores. After attending the workshop last Thursday, I believe there are several provisions which need to be addressed by the Road and Drainage Committee prior to this ordinance being presented to council for a vote. The first provision is the third-party engineer review. Over the weekend, or after the workshop, I had a councilman ask me for information with regards to the city municipalities' permit fees charged in the area where we do business. I provided that requested information to the mayor and council over the weekend for the areas for the permit fees, and Clear Lake Shores is by far the highest, without a doubt. This provision is suggesting that additional permit fees be charged to the new homeowners in order to cover the third-party engineer review, which is suggested by the Roads and Drainage Committee. That is the first issue that I have with that provision. The other issue is that I believe it creates a conflict of interest when you have my client hiring their own private engineer to draft their plans and submit to the city, then requiring my client to pay for a third-party engineer who may have a conflicting opinion. And where is the opinion going to weigh out? The second item is negating any and all options to build a bulkhead. At the workshop, no additional recourse or options were given. The client engineer was basically, we were told they would just have to figure it out. If done properly here in Clear Lake Shores through an engineered plan, bulkheads have been very successful. As of right now, approving this provision would make at least 4 lots that I know of in Clear Lake Shores unbuildable. Another provision is the detailed topo survey. Many current residents do not have proper drainage on their property, and at this point, via the state of Texas, they are not required to do so without remodeling their property to 50% of the value. However, this ordinance proposes to require a topo survey of the property as is in adjacent properties to be paid for by the new build. Why is it necessary for the surrounding properties why is it necessary if the surrounding properties are going to be required to bring their drainage up to code and the new build has to pay for all of the drainage work? This is the issue currently. Current residents do not believe there is anything wrong with their drainage. We've addressed this issue many times with the surrounding lots freely draining on vacant lots before we build. Though some may argue this is considered natural flow, I believe we all as residents have a level of responsibility to ensure our drainage is proper, existing and new homeowners. Finally, the purpose of this ordinance change. Several times during this workshop, I heard one of the main focuses on revising this ordinance was to take the burden off the building inspector to make these decisions and have the third-party engineer review, creating the conflict. If council, by and through the Roads and Drainage Committee, intends to create such a stringent ordinance and at the same time handcuffing the building inspector from making a discretionary decision, what are the residents of Clear Lake Shores left with? Battling it out amongst themselves? That was the theme I heard numerous times at the workshop. I heard it numerous times. The existing drainage system for Clear Lake Shores is insufficient in many areas. And while I agree with several of the provisions presented in the proposed ordinance, I do not think you can expect these very strict provisions of this ordinance for the 20 or so remaining lots to make up for the lack of infrastructure. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ms. South. Anybody else for item B?
Yeah, Ronnie Richards, 226 East Shore Drive. One of the provisions I read was the requirements for gutters, and there's a lot of other solutions, and I would like to see that not included, especially the fact that they have to be guttered into some kind of, described as a holding thing underground or something and drained off. If I read that correctly, I'm not a builder or anything, but that's going to create a hardship. And a lot of these houses built now, they have bull rock drainage and all kinds of drainage. So I think the the gutter portion is exceeding the building codes of the state, and I also think that that needs to be taken into consideration by the engineer that's designing the topo for the drainage plan. The house is either going to have gutters or it's not. If it's not going to have gutters, then the drainage needs to be appropriate to handle that. But a lot of houses don't necessarily have to have gutters, especially with some kind of underground drainage system. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Richards.
Hello, my name is Matt Morreale. I own a lot at 130 Rosewood Road. I don't know if it was going to be super loud or not. Is that good? All right, can everyone hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
All right, I bought the lot at 130 Rosewood Road so I could build my retirement house. I'm a retired disabled Houston firefighter. I plan on building my house in the island, but due to, is it falling down or? Here, I'll hold it. I'm fine. Oh, I see. It needs to be tightened up or something. But due to soaring construction costs, I've had to reevaluate and see what happens with everything due to COVID and supply chain shortages and everything. My idea was to build a retirement house, but I'm having to wait now. So Clear Lake Shores already has the highest building permit fees in the area by far, and now we're adding more fees on top of that. So I would ask that you guys table this and revise it, send it back to the committee, and maybe do some thinking over it. So I'm not as good as everybody else, but that's what I got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm Bob Sokol, owner of 227 West Shore. Just in the process now of applying for a building permit and so forth, so coming up against some of these challenges that we touched on tonight already. Repeating just some of the earlier comments made by Georgette South, a lot of the early considerations that are being talked about by the subcommittee have a lot of pitfalls. I mean, she's touched on some of them, but as a new builder in the area, what I'm seeing as well are tens of thousands of dollars of costs that you're putting in onto the new builders. as well as several months of delays per se. The idea of bringing in a third engineer to look at drainage plans, for example, I mean, that's almost an insult to the city inspector. I mean, you require a stamped engineering plan already. You've got a qualified inspector. Why need a third? What does it really buy you? Nothing. Topos of the neighborhood around it. In my case, I asked to get additional topos on 2 adjacent lots. Okay, we did it. As you know now, Houston is booming on house builds and so forth. Surveyors aren't easy to get. It's already delayed at least 2 weeks just for those additional points to get a surveyor out there and to take the 2 additional topos. Some of the ideas talked about in the subgroup were, getting all of the basically adjacent property owners and topos of their property going into their property at 10 feet. I've seen the neighborhood. There are several properties where you don't have 10 foot. I mean, they built up to the 5 foot level. So what do you do with those houses? So I think a lot more consideration needs to be going into this ordinance before it's voted upon, and just encourage you and the subcommittee to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sokol. Anybody else?
Good evening. My name is Linda Machowski, and I own the property at 1019 North Shore Drive. And right after Ike, there was a codified drainage law in place that if a builder and a homeowner elevate their property 2 feet higher with 40 dump truck loads of dirt, that they must encapsulate all of that dirt with a bulkhead to keep it from going downhill to the adjoining property. Those ordinances were not respected by the person who made the drainage ordinance, the neighbor who flooded my home 3 times in 6 weeks. I got no support from the city, and as a result, because of 4 different lawsuits I've had to file for harassment, for drainage water onto my property, flooding 3 times, I lost those lawsuits with the exception of settling one because I got no support from city officials. It's an outrage what's happened in Clear Lake Shores because you do not enforce the law. I figured it up with my Edward Jones account. I've worked 22 years to build up a retirement, a 401k. By drawing out over $150,000 to get justice and repair my properties, if I had left that in over a period of 10 years, it would be right at $400,000 right now. And as a result of all of this not being enforced, I'm currently under threat of criminal charges to use my permitted home. My home has every permit to have been built in the floodplain as it stands today. I've asked you, Mayor Otten, to exonerate my home so that I can move back with the peace of mind that I will not be shot, I will not be assaulted, and you have told me that you cannot exonerate my home because you saw a picture of a bed in the lower level. This community, and I'm a resident of 31 years, it's an outrage what you've done to innocent citizens. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else on item B? Having none, we'll close that item at 6:50. Next is item 4, reports from council. Councilman Steve Wirtis.
I have nothing to report at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Wirtis. Next is Councilman Rick Fisher.
Just an update from Parks and Pool Committee. We did not have a meeting this month. Got a email from Chris just saying that the last meeting was so close to this one, and no major issues or anything have come up. She had a couple of things that she discussed with Brent, but other than that, since there's no meeting, nothing to report right now.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fisher. Next is Councilwoman Monica Leday.
I attended the Gulf Coast Transit District meeting for June. They approved a few fund increases, $320 million for a grant match program for the electrification of the fleet. They approved funds for a test for the transit project, and then also increased the Goldman Corporation consultant fee to $357,750 over a 15-month period. These funds that go to pay the consultant are actually less than what it would cost to staff the county. And that's it.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Leday. Next, Councilman Alex Scanlon.
I've had a bunch of people reaching out to me for various things in the city, not only roads and drainage related. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that has done that. Communication is really important to getting anything done, whether it's good or bad. I'd say 5 to 10 times as many contacts per week as at the end of the coronavirus pandemic back in November when things were still locked down. So I appreciate people reaching out. I think that means a lot. And please be careful when you're over by the front of the island, Aspen Street, Clear Lake Road. I've received a lot of complaints from the local residents that it's dangerous, and they're concerned they're going to run people over because there's people everywhere, cars parked everywhere. I mean, that's kind of the nature of it, but it is dangerous. And with summer picking up, please be mindful. I'd hate to see one neighbor run over another or a visitor.
Thank you, Mr. Scanlon. Next is Councilman Randy Chronister.
I don't have anything to report at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chronister. Just a couple items. Look forward to seeing everybody out at the 4th of July. Of course, Civic Club's putting together some big event for that, and it'll actually be done on July 3rd at Jarboe Park, and I'm sure they'll talk a little bit more about that. And just an FYI, the Texas 87th legislation session wrapped up, and they did pass one bill, House Bill 5, which will speed up the expansion of broadband to underserved communities. And then also several grid-related bills were passed due to the storm Uri, and that's Senate Bill 3. And then also many of the bills that would have harmed our city's authority either failed to pass or passed in negotiated form that cities can live with. So this is FYI on that. Next is staff reports. Police Department, Chief Keel is out, so Assistant Chief David Donaldson. All right, thank you, Mr. Donaldson. Next is Building Official Kevin Harrell. And if anybody has their windows open in their vehicles, it looks like we're about to get some rain, so.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My report's from June 2nd to June 15th. I issued 10 new permits since our last meeting. 9 of those permits were minor construction. I issued a demo permit for 818 Grove. I currently have 6 homes under construction in various states of construction. I'm currently reviewing a plan right now at 227 West Shore. 419 Oak, the demolition is ongoing. The homeowner has been providing me with progress reports. Permit was issued to remove the second and third floor. Third floor is gone. Parts of the second floor still remain. New construction, Galveston Bay Brewing Company. I reviewed the drawings, so was the fire marshal. Still waiting for comments to come back. And code enforcement and waterfront leases. I have 16 code enforcement cases. 3 of those cases are waterfront leases. The remaining 13 cases are STR permits and high grass and weeds. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. Next is Clear Lake Shores, Kima Volunteer Fire Department Chief Rob Saniga, not present. And then next is Galveston County Health District, Amy Weather.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. We're reporting stats for the month of May. We had 76 calls in Kemah, 4 in Clear Lake Shores. We had given away 10 mutual aid to Bay Cliff, 6, and San Leon, 4. We received 7, 1 to Clear Lake Shores and 6 to Kemah. Average response time is 5 minutes and 32 seconds. We're staying about the same each month.
All right, thank you, Ms. Weber. And next is City Administrator Brent Spear.
Good evening, council. Good evening, residents. Thanks for coming out in the weather. We do have a severe thunderstorm that's trying to get through this area right now. For my report, municipal court's going to be virtual tomorrow. We have completed about half of the surveying at Shell Bottom Park, and that is part of the plan with Shellmark to get a design for the Texas Parks and Wildlife grant. The swimming pool plastering's been completed, and hopefully those that have access to the pool have visited and enjoyed that. Yeah. A sound I hadn't heard. The east parking lot received its electric meter and will hopefully be functioning, may be functioning right now. It has been tested by the vendor and should be up and running, so that'll also complete that lighting project that was sponsored by the EDC. On State Road 146, since we are a boating community, remind you to just keep eye for channel closures if you're accessing the bay from the lake, and they're going to be hit and miss because they're setting girders over there, so they don't want people or boats underneath them when they have a heavy load in the air. But the channels will be open both directions on June 25th and 26th for Texas Outlaw, and also for the boardwalk fireworks on July 4th from 7:30 p.m. to 11:59 p.m. and then the Texas Youth Races July 8th through the 11th. So just be aware of that. City Hall, the roof painting is completed. It looks very nice. We're addressing decals for the entrance to make, access for people easier, so they know what floor to go to and what end of the building. Public Works has been addressing some ditches, and we're working to locate a vendor that can do some grade all ditching for us to improve drainage around the city, and we'll also be identifying with Roads and Drainage some roads to do some crack sealing on. So once that happens, just be aware that we'll have crews that are in the road. You may be inconvenienced momentarily and have to go around the block, but it's all for maintenance and trying to stretch our dollars. And then in other news, currently we have Invest 92L that is spinning around the Bay of Campeche, and I wasn't here for Harvey, but I guess it's a similar recipe that for Harvey it kind of spun down there and picked up speed. So I urge everyone to watch the official National Weather Service NOAA reports. Try not to get all of your weather information from an unknown source on Facebook or Instagram. There's about an 80% probability of that becoming a tropical storm at this point, and it really is changing quickly. And there's also another one off the coast of Africa that I'm monitoring right now. City staff is monitoring all the weather. We are at currently at level 5, and we'll probably be moving to level 4 here very shortly. So it doesn't mean a lot to you, but it means that we implement a plan that to protect city assets, to ensure the safety of our residents and also our responders. The waterfront auction, if you are a property owner in Clear Lake Shores, we do have bid packets that are available on the website for 2 waterfront leases. One is 20 feet and one is 32.5 feet. There is a minimum bid on each one of those, but you can go to the city website and just search for bid packet, and it will bring that up. Let's see, we have some excess equipment that's been listed on Municipal bid, which is a auction, an auction platform that's paid for through the bidder, through a buyer's premium, and hopefully we'll be able to liquidate some of our old equipment that we no longer use, and some of it's not even functioning, so just trying to make some space and get rid of that. And then I'd like to comment with the police department, even though the police chief is not here, he had a family issue that he's dealing with, but to brag on the police department, they've been very active here recently. There's a lot of activity that takes place in Clear Lake Shores that I know for one, I'm pretty much unaware of it, and I'm at the kind of the epicenter of most information. But I think our residents probably aren't aware of it, but there is a lot of narcotics activity that takes place in our city. It's usually not on this side of the bridge, so it's on the other side of the bridge, and it's along our major thoroughfare. And that comes about through diligence of our police department in identifying unsafe drivers, people that are speeding or inattentive, have equipment violations. It usually doesn't start with somebody throwing a big bag of narcotics out their window or a bundle of cash. It's something small that leads to something big. And through those efforts, right now they are working some seizures, and a seizure is not complete until that whole case is adjudicated and has gone through the court. But they're currently they have 4 vehicles that they're doing seizure proceedings on, and a motorcycle, and then several $1,000s worth of cash. So that's some of the hard work that goes in and is put in by our police department every day that probably goes unnoticed. And not that will be returning to the city probably expeditiously, because things get dragged out in the courts, and they're a little longer now in a post-COVID court world. But just so you're aware, that's some of the things that they're working on. So thank you, Police Department. And that's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Spear. Next is item 6, committee reports, Parks and Pool. Having none, Roads and Drainage.
Thank you, Kurt. I'll keep it brief. As you know, Alex has presented the drainage ordinance to the City Council last Thursday, and he's here. We're here for approval tonight. We'll see how that goes. If not, we'll carry on working on it. We're updating our list for, as Brent mentioned, for local stormwater drainage problems, and we'll begin correcting those problems as soon as a contractor is chosen. And Kevin's preparing a list of contractors that can clean culverts and contour the ditches. We have a meeting set up within. We will have a meeting set up within the next couple of weeks to address these issues and to prioritize the work items that we have on our list. The latest copy of the pavement management program that we just got is now been distributed to our membership, and they're looking at it for evaluation and how we're going to actually integrate it into our work. The formal acceptance procedure should be expecting soon. We should be formally accepting it. To summarize, this year we'll be focusing on we will focus on basic road maintenance and the drainage improvement, and also we might choose to resurface one of the worst roads this year rather than letting it go till next year, and that might be Blue Point. Next year we plan to resurface. If we don't do Blue Point this year, we'll resurface Narcissus and possibly a third road next year. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Sowery. Next is Zoning Board of Adjustments.
Mayor and Council, there is a meeting on the 28th of June. 7 p.m. This building. Request is for minimum yards at 531 West Shore. Zoning Board of Adjustments. Anybody interested should show. Planning and zoning has not had any activity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Michalski. Next is waterfront compliance. All right, item number 7, Civic Club Activities Report.
Okay, as you mentioned earlier, our Independence Day celebration will be on Saturday, July 3rd, which is the Civic Club's main membership drive. We'll start off with a golf cart parade. We'll have jumps there, a big water slide for the kids, a pie contest, cupcake contest, cornhole tournament. It's going to run from like 12 to 3. Each family that signs up for membership gets one free meal, which will be hamburgers and hot dogs, and then we'll be selling them to the public. And then the kids' back to school party has been scheduled for August 15th.
Thank you, Teresa. Next is item 8, Economic Development Corporation.
Council. We had our EDC meeting last Tuesday. We went over a few things. It was a fairly short meeting. We approved a small amount of funds to run a half-page ad that Adri helped us with in the Galveston County Daily News. We discussed the Galveston Bay Brewing updates, still in the works. We discussed some finances and funds, cash flow, and also had a Q&A with the 3 applicants for the open EDC seat.
Thank you, Mr. Boltinghouse. All right, item number 9, public comments. At this time, any person with city-related business may speak to the City Council in compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. City Council may not deliberate. Comments from the public should be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes per individual. Anybody like to address?
Linda Michalski, 1019 North Shore Drive. I'd just like to bring it to the attention of all the new council members. My Facebook account is Linda, L-Y-N-D-A, Tipton Michalski. And I have published, because I have not been heard in this city over a period of 31 years. I have to agree with Mr. Johnson. There is discrimination toward brown-skinned people. I have been called mulatto. I've been called high yellow. I recently published, just this week, 2 officials at one time putting crosses in my yard, hanging pictures of witches along my fence. It's a deliberate attempt to run me out of town because I have stood up for the protection of my home against drainage water flooding it out 3 times in a period of 6 weeks. I have fought hard 4 lawsuits to prevent the taking of my lower level that has every permit from 1993 until now for every bit of work that's ever been done in that lower level. I am the only person in Clear Lake Shores that I've been told by reputable officials that know the history of the home. I'm the only one that has every permit for building in the floodplain. I have asked repetitively for my home to be exonerated. I have asked repetitively that my funds be reimbursed. This is not right, what's gone on in the city of Clear Lake Shores. I have been victimized terribly, and I refuse to be a victim, especially when I'm called such humiliating names. This is not right. This is 2021. I have owned 7 properties in this area at one time, 2 waterfront homes, and it appears to me that some officials wanted my property's view so badly that they would flood it 3 times and then use their position as a FEMA official to remove the entire lower level to get a view of the lake. I am honest, I am diligent, I am a stellar citizen of this community, and I have not done anything that deserves to be threatened with criminal charges to use the lower level of my home. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Michalski. Anybody else for public comments? Yes. Well, you need to come up here, Mr. Chernecki.
To be put on the agenda, is this where it would be? I don't really understand it.
It's coming up next on our scheduled visit.
Oh, that's all.
So
Okay, I'm sorry.
you can talk now, and then you get to talk on scheduled visitor.
No, I'd rather do this.
Okay.
I just didn't know, I didn't want to miss my shot.
So anybody else for public comments?
Mary Freeman, 818 Hawthorne Road. I can understand and sympathize with some of the complaints we've had from some of our speakers. I also have been a unfortunate victim of selective enforcement by the city officials here. There has been several occasions, even documented on city council meeting minutes, where a former city councilwoman complained on 2 consecutive city council meetings how she was being put upon by her neighbor, and she was very loud and obnoxious about it. And when there was a pause, our mayor, Mr. Auden, said, "We'll get to that," and that's a part of public record. Mr. Rick Fisher, our council member here, when I talked to him about the fee schedule that was being placed on Deep Hole with the potential of renting...
Can you please not address individual council, but the whole council? That's the requirement.
The whole council. Okay, the whole council doesn't share the same actions that I'm speaking about.
But the requirement of the public comments is to address council, not individuals.
I'll hear it out. Council member made mention that he was okay with people parking in front of my house when Deep Hole was rented for public facilities. I thought that very generous of him, since they're not impacting his property. I am truly frustrated with the partisan politics that are going on within the council here, in the fact that they will do favors for their friends to the disregard of other citizens. I have had actions taken against my property without any ordinance supporting it, because I did ask for a letter stating the ordinance and the action being taken, and to also stipulate that I had complied with the city's requests, but I never got that letter received. So I'm quite frustrated with others about the selective enforcement and the abuse of power that seems to be a bit permissive here within our city officials. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Freeman. All right, anybody else public comments? Having none, public comments is closed. 7:15. Item number 10, scheduled visitor, Brian Chernecki, resident of 419 Oak Road. Disposition of 419 Oak Road, progress and situation report. Consideration of timeline, estimate remaining stages, and time of completion. You have 5 minutes.
Thanks. My apologies. I have about 3 weeks ago I contracted shingles, herpes zoster, I think it is. Anyway, it's very painful, and I don't want to be here. Trust me, but I don't think I have any choice. Let's see. First of all, we met on March 15th or 16th, I think, the council as a whole, in a public hearing, had to do with my property on 419 and the demolition thereof. And at that time, I think the council, it's a little confusing on, I had to look back at the tape. It was either 90 days or 100 days. I think the mayor actually said 10 days plus 90, but regardless, that would bring it to today. And a friend of mine called me last week and said, well, hey, they already voted on that June 1st. And so that surprised me, since it was 2 weeks ahead of when I thought we were going to do it. I don't normally attend council meetings, so I didn't come. And I think Mr. Harrell mentioned to me that I might be on the agenda, but I didn't know it was a public hearing to decide the fate of my property, so that's a different thing. Anyway, here we are. So at the time we talked about the 90 days, I had no idea that the permit doesn't allow you to work on Sunday. So in a 90-day period, that's 12 days. So 78 days is the number of days I had to work on the property, except for one thing, and we mentioned it at that meeting, and that was that weather could stop me. Well, as you may or may not know, this May was one of the heaviest rain Mays in the history of Houston, over double the normal rain. And when I gave my reports to Mr. Harrell, I identified in each 2-week report how many rain days we lost. The total, counting today, up to today, is 23.5 days. So if you take the 12 Sundays out, you've got 78 days. If you take 23.5 days out, well, you've got about 50 days of work is all I had to do this. In the 50 days, we took out 2 trailers full of metal, and I don't know where the captain went, but he's one of the guys that helped me do it. 2 16-foot lowboys, and we now have 5 dumpsters, 30-yard dumpsters of debris that we've removed, which is 150 cubic yards. We're not quite at the 150 yet, but about 130, 140. So we've also taken down the 2nd and 3rd floor, and I heard Mr. Harrell say, well, it's not all down yet. There are a few upright pieces there. The reason they're left is because we had to start removing the debris so the engineer could see the bottom. And those pieces that are remaining, to get them down, we're going to have to jackhammer them. They're not falling on anybody. We had to jackhammer every concrete piece up there. Today, no, not today. Yesterday, we brought in we got all the debris out now so we can get to the back building. We put an excavator. I don't know if you know what that is, with the bucket and all that. And we're now tearing out the back building as well. So, I mean, we're well underway to removing this. Now, one distinction I want to point out here, the International Property Maintenance Code really wasn't meant for this situation. It's meant for a derelict property that the city has the need or thinks they have the need to remove for the health and safety of the people. This isn't for a person whose house burned down and the next day demand that it's out of code. It just doesn't apply. It's an abuse of that code, really. But even if you apply that code, I'm doing my best to get it down. There's no amount of flooding or wind that's going to harm any other property. The whole property is fenced, and we work on it daily as long as the weather permits. I personally have this shingles affliction now, and I've been in bed for a week or 2. But Mr. Mike Henry has been there with crew and equipment every day that it could be worked on. And it looks like tomorrow might be an issue. Anyway, what I really want the council to do, I have the same motive you do. I guarantee you. I have no home. I have nowhere to live. I can't get another home unless I either build one there or sell it. That's just the frank fact of the matter. I have every motive to go as quickly as possible on that property. The reason I drew the distinction between the fire damage and the derelict property is that property is not empty. I have found tens of thousands of dollars worth of my personal belongings there already. I found gold coins, a gold chain, silver coins. I found one rifle that virtually unburned because it depended on how it all fell. So I couldn't get to the fine debris where the personal property is because I had the bulk of the heavy debris from the 2nd and 3rd floor on top of it, per the city, and it took a while to get it away. Anyway, that's my.
Thank you, Mr. Ternecki. Next is item 11, old business. Discussion and possible action may be taken on the following items. Item A is appoint one member to serve on the Board of Director of the Economic Development Corporation due to vacancy left by Charles Scoville. There were 3 applicants on this. Mr. Richards, and I'm going to forget Jesse Young, and who else was the last one? Mark Atherton. So those have all been presented and was spoken in length at the EDC, and they did not make any formal recommendation coming out of the EDC, so it's up to council.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Mark Atherton to the vacant position on the EDC left by Charles Scoville.
I'll second that.
So I have a motion for Mr. Mark Atherton for being on the EDC board by Mr. Fisher, second by Mr. Cronister. Any is there any discussion?
Yes, actually. Why?
And a lot of the 3, Mark is the one that I just happen to know best. I've talked to him, at length, just on what his qualifications are, and actually some of the reasons that he actually would like to get into that position. And just from our discussions, it sounds to me like he wants to do it for the right reasons, not just for something that's a social status, or he truly wants to get in there and do a lot of good for the EDC. He's retired, so he's going to be able to put in a lot of time for it, not have a job interfere with it. So that's talk to the other people too that agree with that assessment. So that's my recommendation.
I'm not inclined to disagree with you. I just was curious. I went to the meeting and met them all, so I just was curious if anybody else had. But
I picked Mark because he's a longtime resident. I actually went and talked to Mark about it when I saw his application. Although all the applicants are, somewhat qualified. We know Ronnie's already taken home some awards from being on that committee. So we're lucky to have him back in the community to actually bounce some things off of. Jesse Young is in a position where probably I was several years ago when people asked me to run for city council, and I was raising small children, running my own business, and really didn't have a whole lot of time on my hands. I also talked to Jesse Young, and his heart kind of seems in it, but he's pretty busy right now doing those things, and that's what made me lean towards Mark. I do know that there's going to be some other positions coming up, so those people can reapply. That's why I picked Mark. That's why I second that.
I mean, I kind of feel like we get Ronnie regardless.
So vocal.
I think we're lucky with all these applicants. No matter who we choose, that's not going to be a bad choice.
I completely agree.
Any further discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor, aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. And I would like to thank all the applicants. It's a good problem to have. We haven't had that problem in a long time. We're looking for people that have a pulse. So it's great to have those people come forward, and there's other things out there for them to do, like Mr. Cronister was talking about. And look forward to more of those items. Next is item 12, new business, consent agenda. Does anybody, council, would like any items pulled from consent agenda? Having none, is there any objections to the consent agenda? Having none, the consent agenda is accepted. Items A, B, and C. Number 13, council business discussion and possible action may be taken on the following items. It says item B. Huh? Lost an A. We'll fix that on the minutes the next time. Action from public hearing regarding ordinance violation concerning junk vehicles at property 15 Tyndall, Clear Lake Road, Shores, Texas 77565. And Mr. Spear, you have the floor if you'd like to discuss.
Thank you. This is an ordinance violation that was spoken to earlier tonight's meeting, public hearing portion. If the resident has the appropriate paperwork that describes that those were in fact valid, then certainly accept that and move to have that dismissed or not acted upon. I was speaking with the building official. He doesn't scan the license plates or anything, but he does have to look at the stickers that are on the windshield. So that's the driving force, the inspection sticker for the registration, and so that's what he was trying to do, and that's what he was looking at. The inspection stickers were out of date. I can let him speak to that.
Thank you, Council. Earlier today, I visited Mr. Johnson's residence, spoke with him. Of course, I was there to look to see if the registration stickers were on the vehicles, which is the way I can tell whether or not they were registered. The stickers weren't there, and I visited with Mr. Johnson, and he said that he did have proof that he registered the vehicles, and I said that's fine. Just come to the council meeting and provide the proof. If he will give me copies of the information showing that he did register the vehicles, then he can be taken off the violation list. That will be fine. If Mr. Johnson can show me that they're registered and police can verify that, with a visual, he can come in my office sometime this week and provide me the copies, if that's. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I'm hurrying. Mr. Johnson, you're good. You have to remember that I have to look at the vehicles. All right, sir. There you are. Yes. Can you get the stickers put on, please? To make them operable. That's correct. but Mr. Johnson is in compliance. Until he gets correct. But he did show me proof.
I'll speak to it for just a minute. It is discussion only, so I guess somewhere there was some confusion about us voting on it tonight. After the input from the workshop the other day, there are a few things that need to go back to the committee. I'm not actually on the committee, I'm just liaison counsel to that committee. So these guys have been working hard. The one thing that I can tell you after living here 24 years is drainage is a problem on the island. It's obvious that it is because you guys feel very passionate about it. It's something that I think this committee is trying to work for to make better for our city, not make it more stringent. We keep referring to this other engineer as a third-party inspector. It's not a third-party inspector. Kevin is not a registered engineer. If you turn in a set of plans to the city of League City, your engineer stamps your plan, you take that plan to League City, and their engineers review it, not their inspectors. We're on a smaller scale, but the fact is it's not a third-party person. Ms. South had brought to our attention that it's very expensive to build here. It is. She did send us some emails with some information. I happened to go research some of that, and it is quite high to build a house here. There's no doubt about that. We do not have a city tax like some of these other entities have. They have a lot more money to play with. I think we should talk about that in the next roads and drainage meeting also that's coming up, and discuss how you can appropriate some funds to help cover that cost, like Mayor Otten brought up in the workshop. Maybe it's not something you put totally on the builder, but I'm not sure how we're going to do that yet, because I don't know exactly where those funds are appropriated to at this moment, but we're researching that also. So it was a very constructive workshop. There was a lot of information that came out of it. I know bulkheads are a big concern. I think one thing I got out of it, and Alex can correct me if my notes are wrong, but that was something that needs to be reconsidered as still an option. Maybe it's not the only option, maybe it's a last resort option, but the whole purpose of that committee's work over 300 hours, long before I started on city council, was to try to make it better for the people of Clear Lake Shores. That's what I think all of the volunteers up here are trying to do. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Alex if he's got anything to say.
I'll take a stab at it. Steve and Monica, I know you weren't with us at the workshop, It was a good 2.5 hours. Appreciate all the input from the citizens that came out, and thank you everyone that came out to the hearing. We wanted to get it out in the public eye and get feedback, because it's hard to get feedback unless something's about to happen, right? Everyone's here now, so that was good. So thank you for that. When we were at the workshop, we talked through the entire methodology of it, and it was 2.5 hours. It was long. I will save that from repeating tonight. I don't know if I have it in me to do that again. But I just want to touch on, I've got 7 things here. I wrote 6 things here. I wrote them down during the public hearing today, just as not as a formal response, but just to touch on them and try to clarify so everyone out there can hear the other side of it, because those were all pretty much all complaints, right? And I understand they're valid. So starting off, we follow the Texas Water Code, the law. I think it's 11.086. That really defines how drainage is supposed to be handled in Texas. And that language is already in our existing ordinances. So that lined up well. We're just trying to make sure our ordinances continue to align with that. Number 2 here, Randy explained it pretty well, the city engineer review, the third-party review. That is not intended to be another engineering design. That is not something where another engineer is going to say, I don't like how you did this, or I don't think these calculations are right. Their job is to review it strictly against the ordinances that are in place and advise the building official, the city, if it is in violation, or if there's something that does not work from a technical perspective with the city's facilities that they're connecting to. That's very common in pretty much every municipality around here. In the greater area, there is an engineering review, and we were just trying to basically outsource that. So Kevin is not having to wear 15 hats. That is true. We're trying to take some pressure off of him. It also puts a set of eyes on it that is looking at it from an unbiased opinion. I'm not saying Kevin is biased, but we've heard enough tonight of things where that has been suggested. So having someone who is not locally in this community looking at it was something we viewed as a positive. Regarding the bulkheads and the topos, we already require a topo, a survey showing the elevations. We don't have any stipulations on what that needs to contain. It's been a problem, and the bulkheads, again, it's very open-ended. That requirement doesn't change. It's just more stringent. It should not affect the price of a topo significantly. It should be a one and done. These are very small pieces of property. It's not like we're asking them to do it on 5 acres. But I'll touch on price in a bit. Regarding the topo and the bulkheading, that is to make sure that whoever is doing the design and whoever is reviewing the design has adequate information to evaluate the situation, to know how the neighboring properties are draining, and to make develop a quality design and make a good decision, not to increase the cost or make it extra difficult or restrict what you can do. We felt those 2 items would contribute to better drainage designs and just a general better path for the community. Further on the bulkheads is the consideration of detention. In our community, we know we have flash floods that occur, right? We have 4 inches of rain in a ridiculously short amount of time. It just happened in San Leon. We all saw those pictures. That's what we identified as something we can mitigate. It's probably about to happen. We'll be trapped in here all night. So that's something that we thought we could mitigate, and we try to come up with a plan for that. Bringing in excessive fill, bulkheading a property, and bringing in just as much dirt as you can only makes the problem worse, right? There's less place for the water to go. It's going on the lots that aren't filled. And that's something that we can't address as roads and drainage. Our roads and drainage system, our drainage system cannot accommodate any more volume of water. So the more fill that's brought into this city, the worse the localized flash flooding is going to be. So that's something we thought we could address and part of our methodology there. Regarding the gutters, that was actually brought to us by a builder in the city at one of our roads and drainage meetings, which I thought was funny or interesting that was something that was has been brought up a lot, and that's something we're definitely going to reconsider at our next roads and drainage meeting. But that was brought to us by a builder, so everyone has an opinion about this stuff, and we are listening. And six, it was brought up that existing properties, existing structures, or retrofits. Say you want to put a pool in, you want to put a shed in, you want to expand your property. How is that handled? And we did not address that because it wasn't addressed in the existing ordinances. Nothing initiated that thought. But that was brought forward in the workshop last week, so that's something that's going to be on the docket to discuss, and I think that's going to be very good, a big adder for it. So, anything else in here? And fees. Everyone's concerned with a dollar amount. Randy touched on it. That's something we're going to consider as well. How, if we're going to increase the cost for permitting, maybe there's something we can do with our already high fees to compensate. I don't know where that's going to go. But that's something that was a very valid point that was brought up. I don't have too much more here without going through the whole year of discussions. We probably had 10 or 12 roads and drainage meetings that were 2 or 3 hours long, going over this and back and forth with input from citizens and builders and Kevin and Brent and council. Well, Randy and myself are the only two that have been involved, really. But it's been a collaborative process, and I'm thankful for everyone that's brought forward more information last week and today, and we are considering it. So you can see we already said this was discussion only on the agenda. We made that change after last week, so we recognize those complaints and recognize what was brought forward today. Steve and Monica, you probably have the least knowledge on this subject because you weren't at the workshop last week, so I'd encourage y'all to ask questions now or anything that we can do to clarify. And as far as attending the next Roads and Drainage workshop, it'll be very informative, but I'm not sure how that works as far as having a quorum. And Kurt, I don't know how that would, if that would be good to have them there, or if we end up with a quorum at the next meeting, does that just complicate things?
If there's time to get council there, it'd be good. So that's one of the questions I had with the committee, and it's, again, great work by the committee and all the members. With all these questions that have been come up by the residents and citizens, business owners, is there, how are you planning to handle that, and how can we get the information to be transparent back out to the folks that took their time to voice those opinions and issues, to circle back to them what the forward plan is and rationale of closing those items by the committee.
At the Roads and Drainage Committee, we function on an open meetings platform where anyone is able to attend. We've had a lot of attendees over the last year, so I would encourage you to come to that meeting. It might be very, very long with a lot of people there, but that's really the way to do it. Or you can contact people individually beforehand. I'm open to suggestions as well. I've got books worth of information that we've worked on this, so it's hard to explain it to someone who's not who hasn't been involved over the last year in its entirety. But I'm open to really any suggestions if council has any.
I have a question for Richard. Is there another Roads and Drainage meeting coming up? I heard you mention that earlier. We haven't set it up yet, but I told you over Christmas Day to see if next Tuesday or Thursday will be available for the clubhouse. So I know during that Roads and Drainage meeting we talk a lot about the roads too, not just this and some of the other ditches and whatnot and water flow. Is there something we can do, maybe set that meeting up to just talk about this and open it up to whoever wants to come to that meeting? Sure. Yeah, we can do that. Just a question. Because like Alex said, they get lengthy. We've been in there for 3 hours, 4 hours before, during the middle of the day, so they get long.
It might make more sense for us to have a Roads and Drainage meeting. I don't even know what week it is in June. It's the second or third or fourth. It may make sense for us to have one and go over all of this, because we did have, with today's hearing and last week's, 3 hours of input from the public, which is a lot of information. Maybe we have a meeting that we don't encourage. You're always welcome the masses to come to, and then we have a second one once we kind of hash out a new version of the ordinance, so we can get some work done and then present that for public consumption and then a second round of comments.
Right, and my concern is just making sure the public has time to review it and, make their comments and make sure that their requests have been heard. There may be some more questions from that. I've got a few here, I can give you a separate list.
And the next council meeting is not until
July 6th.
So we have 3 weeks from now? So that's a decent amount of time, and yeah, really until we have the next meeting with roads and drainage, it's going to be difficult to present anything new because we don't have anything.
May I make a suggestion, please? Due to work constraints, I could not attend a meeting because I believe it started at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I think perhaps the same applies to Monica as well. If we could have a meeting, say, 5:30 or something like that, then I could definitely plan on attending. I did have a couple of questions. Would this be the appropriate time to address them? Because I'm just trying to put myself in people's shoes when I was reading through all the detailed notes. Regarding the topography of elevation, it was making reference to this 5-foot grid pattern. And you had kind of alluded to the fact that this was really, I got the impression it was an insignificant increase in cost. I'm trying to think of something when you think of every 5 square feet, or 5 foot square rather, that it would be substantially more expensive than the previous method, whatever that was. Just a couple of points and then you can address them if you like. It also looked as though there were 2 topography reports that were being required, an as-is and a proposed. And I'm referencing page 6, section 5, paragraph D. Next item was, I just wanted to confirm, which I think I did through the listening this evening, if this applied to new construction only, and if new construction, would that include perhaps an addition onto the house or pool construction, which I believe that does, is what I was understanding. Another thought that I had was how does this affect current homeowners who currently experience water pooling up on their property? And then also, I'm just brainstorming, if a homeowner had the ability to add a sump pump to pump the excess water off their property onto an adjacent street. So again, those are my initial thoughts when I was reviewing.
Sure, and those are good thoughts. I wrote them down, so I'll address all 5 of these as best I can for you. The topo grid, we have very, very small properties here. They're 40 feet wide. Maybe 7 feet's more appropriate, but if you take one at the 4 corners and there's an existing swale running through the center of it, it's going to be missed on the topo survey, unless it's explicitly denoted by the person taking that data. And we just came up with that random criteria that we discussed and felt was applicable to the property, and then into the adjacent property was to show how the grade behaves once you go beyond the property line. Is it going uphill or downhill away from your property? So the designer and reviewer is able to determine, is the adjacent property draining onto the proposed work site before, and then if it is, how is that being accounted for in the design? That was the 10 foot into the adjacent property requirement. The 5 foot grid, I think I counted the numbers. I forget exactly, but it was something we felt was appropriate. It's stringent, but it is appropriate because if there is an existing swale that's 3 feet wide, that's full of grass, unless they place that measuring tool in it down on the grade, they could miss it, and that could have a detrimental effect on the design. But that is on the list to discuss at the next meeting. Maybe we can increase it. It was very, very open-ended in the ordinance before. It just said with appropriate points. It didn't specify anything, so we came up with a specification. That was the hard one there. Number 2, we only require one survey, one topo. That's existing. The proposed is referencing the proposed elevations in the design. So that's just whatever the proposed elevations would be. Some communities require a final survey to confirm that it matches the design to make the inspection process easier, which we discussed and thought that would be a little excessive. And that would, you know, if we required that, then Kevin, who's our inspector, would be able to take the permitted design, the finalized topo, including top of grade elevations and flow lines and pipe sizes, and compare them, because it's hard to tell what an elevation is by eye. You know, you really need some type of measuring device. But we did not add that in because it was getting to be a lot. Number 3, it primarily applies to new construction, and in our discussion with Kevin in these meetings, new construction includes new structures that require permitting, which does include a pool, does include a garage addition, a shed in your backyard that's under whatever the International Code Council's minimum is, wouldn't require it, but any new construction would, and that would be a modification to the existing drainage plan. And the ordinance is written, and was written before, we didn't change this, that the impact area, which is the area that's affected by the work, is all that needs to be incorporated into the design. So if you wanted to add, I don't know, say a garage in the back of your property, you don't have to develop a design for the entire property due to this small amount of construction. And that's how it's generally written right now, before any changes. So we didn't mess with that. Current homeowners with drainage conditions, that gets into the Texas Water Code. There's a certain amount of time that once something exists, just like all things with Texas property law, that, you know, it's like just like adverse possession. After so many years, you know, how that works. There's something in the Water Code similar to that. I don't know what it is to the exact, you know, time period. I think it depends based on the situation. But if a house has been here for a long time and it's historically drained across the adjacent lot, and then someone comes in to build on it, they have to accommodate that flow. But current homeowners in no way would have to do anything, just like they don't have to do anything right now. That was brought up in the that was brought up last week in our workshop. If there's a house that exists, whether it has bad drainage or good drainage, unless the drainage on that property does not, you know, match what was permitted, if there was never a drainage plan, or because it's old or it wasn't permitted with one, there's nothing to follow. Now, if there's a home on the island that has a drainage plan on file and it's been modified, that wasn't permitted, or it's fallen out of good, you know, out of repair, it needs to be corrected back to the original design if there's an issue with it, but it doesn't require any change to an existing property. And then last, you asked about a sump pump. That's certainly a solution. We did not limit the solutions to come up with a drainage scheme for a property. We did not say you must have so many area drains, you must have property edge swales, you must not have standing water, you must not have a detention pond. We left that as open-ended as we thought was reasonable. So yes, if you had a ponding issue in the backyard, you wanted to put a pump in, or you wanted to design a big hole in the back and put a pump in, you could do that. We don't restrict it. I don't know why you would want to do that, but you certainly could. So we thought that was important to leave it as versatile, or I guess allow a solution as versatile as you wanted, because that's kind of the nature of this community. Everyone's house is different, everything is unique, so the less we restricted what could be done or what needed to be done, we thought was the best.
You can go ahead and you can use the microphone, please.
I just wanted to say that one of the energy points was fees, and roads and drainage really doesn't have a lot to say about how we set the fees. And so if you're interested in dealing with that, that's kind of your purview as to how you want to deal with that. So again, it's not something roads and drainage would deal with.
Yep. Thanks. Anybody else? Mr. Ralph?
Yeah, I'm Bob Rolfe, 815 Hawthorne. Alex, a question to you. Did the Drainage Committee consider like a home that's like a waterfront property that, you know, water seeks its own level? So if you raise a piece of property there, because some of this water that you're talking about is when the lake comes up to an elevation, it's backflowing actually through the pipes, the drainage pipes, and coming back into those lots. And putting filling in one particular lot in Clear Lake Shores isn't going to change the elevation of Clear Lake, Gulf of Mexico, you know, Galveston Bay. So I can see where you get further inland where you develop and have problems like that. You can create drainage problems for your neighbors and so on and so forth. But as long as, you know, if you're, like I said, if you're in a situation where the water is actually the lake is rising because of wind and tide and storms. It's not necessarily rainfall that's flowing from one property to the next. It's water backing up into into that area, and water seeks its own level. So improving a lot isn't going to worsen the flooding to your neighbors. That's just my thoughts.
Yeah, and that was one of the concerns, like your higher streets, as they flows down, the ones closer to the lake, it backs up into the drains and stuff.
Right, and that was one of our number one items we did discuss. We recognized early on, and I have it in here. We recognized that we live in the floodplain. Everyone's home, anything below base flood elevation here is going to flood. Not if, but when. It's going to happen. We've all experienced it. The issue here is when we have a very intense rain and the lake is not backed up, or if the lake is backed up, but it hasn't come over Shore Road yet, which is a pretty common thing, right? It comes up the grass, but Shore Road's not underwater. All the ditches are starting to fill up with seawater, but Shore Road is that top ring. It's like a tiny bathtub, a very shallow, large pan. When the water comes out of the sky, it's going to fill that up, right, if it lands inside of it. We only have so much volume. And every time we bring in any amount of fill, we begin to displace that water. And eventually, until we fill the whole center of the island, it's going to go to the low points. Like you said, it finds its own level. Well, the more fill we bring in, the worse that problem is. And that's what we identified on roads and drainage as our number one problem with the drainage system, is we don't have detention volume. And lots right now that are low, that don't shed water very well, that are unbuilt, they're holding a lot of water when it rains. So when you fill those, all of that water gets displaced somewhere else. There is nowhere else in the drainage system for it to go. As people put in more culverts, there's even less. A ditch has 4 or 5 times the amount of volume of a culvert, especially the small culverts we have to put in here. So we're losing that detention volume at a very fast rate. But we also identified we don't want to prevent people from building up. We don't want their slabs to be higher. So we try to find a medium in there where you have less fill than more fill, right? We're not going to cut it out completely, but we can mitigate it some, and that should help with the detention issue that we have. And it was at the advice of the engineers in the last 10 years of roads and drainage projects with us. You know, we have a detention and conveyance issue. We cannot convey any water when the lake backs up, so all we can do is detain it. It's going to go somewhere. Yes, filling one lot probably doesn't make a big difference, but if you fill 100 lots, that's a tremendous amount of water, especially when it's the difference between somebody's garage and their golf cart getting 3 inches of water, 4 inches of water in it, and not. So there's an impact on those that are not actively building or not able to raise their homes.
Any further discussion? Council? All right. thank you everybody for all their comments. Item D, consider and approve the procurement of 300 U.S. Stick flags to be placed around the perimeter of the waterfront and the island for the upcoming Independence 4th of July by a team of volunteers. I put this item on here. The cost is about $300 for the flags. We need about 300 flags. Obviously, it's in there. They put them around the island like other communities are doing. We already have them coming onto the island, and those are the big, bigger flags. And we also put them on the esplanades and on 2094. But these are 8 by 12 flags, so about this tall. And just trying to put a committee together to put those out there, and a lot of neighborhoods do it, and just get in the spirit of the Independence Day and stuff.
I'll motion to approve I didn't print this section, the flag purchase.
I'll second it.
Alright, motion by Mr. Scanlon, second by Ms. Leday. Any discussion?
Yes, how high will the flags be off the ground? And I ask the question because, correct me if I'm wrong, proper flag etiquette, the flag should not touch the ground.
That's correct.
So, am I correct in that thought process?
Yeah, so they're going to be on sticks that'll go in the ground and be higher than.
Then I just want to make sure the flag would not be touching
now,
the
if
ground.
somebody comes along and pushes it further in, I can't help that.
Understood.
But that was the idea. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye. Any opposed, nay. Having none, the motion passes unanimously. Next is item E. It's raining hard out there. We might be testing our drainage system right now, obviously. Review and approve bids received on construction of the Lowell Brown Fishing Pier. Mr. Spear.
Thank you, Mayor. This Lowell Brown Fishing Pier, obviously up at Sunset Park, where we have a lot of activity, usually on a night not like this. Watch the sunset and talk with your neighbors. That fishing pier has been damaged consistently with wave action off of the lake, particularly when we get a north wind to come in there and it'll break. It'll hit the bulkhead. It accelerates the decay on the wooden bulkhead, and then the energy from that hit or strike pushes up. And we've had wood treated lumber flooring, planks up there, and as they get peeled up and we try to screw them back down, the joists that are part of that construction keep deteriorating. So you're trying to screw through and screw back down something that got ripped out. And so on a inspection tour that building official took when the water was down, this was well over a year ago, he noticed that we did have some significant holes in the bulkhead. We inquired with some of our vendors on the bulkhead that had done previous work, and we received some bids in an unofficial way, supplying what we've had in the past, wooden bulkhead and a wooden pier. We went through the process of developing an RFP, or request for proposal, and ran that through the end of May. And we had a total of 4 companies that were interested and inquired and took packets, and we had 2 that actually bid it. One was a complete bid for all of the work, including the optional material of some composite decking, and that was by Bulkhead and Pier. The second one was an incomplete bid for a product that they market and install, which was an aluminum pier with composite with a composite decking, and then there was an upgrade from the composite to aluminum. And I inquired how that would, prior to receiving their bid, I inquired how that would be how that would be handled in brackish water in our environment. And they said that they have them, and I've seen that they have them in other coastal communities, but I was still a little suspect. So upon opening the sealed bids, one was complete from bulkhead and pier. When we did this exercise, probably close to a year ago, it was about $90,000, and that was for all wood. The bulkhead and pier quote was $88,495 for complete bulkhead. It's restrained to our drawings that Councilman Scanlon helped with in identifying and making our making our design complete. The difference was that we requested composite bulkhead, and we have composite bulkhead at Deep Hole, and it holds up very well. There's a lot of wave action that takes place there, and we see no deterioration of that. So this is for a composite bulkhead, which I guess the wood whalers, the wood pilings, and then the wood framing, and it includes wood decking. However, there is, and our problem again is when we get wave action, it's going to hit that bulkhead, and the energy is going to extend upward and peel the deck off of it. So in looking at not having that happen, they have a product that's called flow-through legacy panels. These are composite panels. They just like their name says, water flows through it, come from the top, and water can go up through it from the bottom. And the process includes that the process will allow that any of that energy that hits the bulkhead's not going to tear up the fishing pier. Now, the one problem that I see with that, it is ADA compliant. Kevin's confirmed that with them. But the kind of the one step back, or the one problem I see, is if you are removing your class ring and you want to go fishing and you miss your pocket, it's not going to land on a deck. It's going to probably go through and be in the mud of Clear Lake. So we'll have some things that probably get lost or dropped. Could be a cell phone or two. But I think as far as a solution for the city, I would recommend going with this bulkhead and pier with the adder for the pass-through panels. The quote from the aluminum pier and decking company was with a composite deck that we requested as an adder was $68,600. If they used their aluminum decking materials, that added $9,000, and so just for the pier installed, made out of aluminum, that was $77,600.
Hey, Adri, can you go to the page for the bid proposals, please?
Sorry. And with bulkhead and pier, with that additional adder, my arithmetic is correct, it's $90,745 for that solution. So that's with the pass-through grading and the composite bulkhead. The $77,600 did not include the bulkhead. They don't do bulkhead work. This item, yeah, it would be $70,000 plus $45. And I'm not all convinced that aluminum would be a good solution, because if it would take it would probably take an impact and kink. I don't think it would be as resilient maybe as the wood. So that was another consideration that I had. Plus, it was just priced high.
Corrosion is a big issue.
And corrosion was another concern. So they have different alloys, and they can alloy that material for saltwater use, for freshwater use, for corrosives and things like that. But we've got a lot going on here, and I think staying with the wooden pilings is the way to go. This is not a budgeted item, obviously. It's a year old. It would get our fishing pier back in action. It would allow our residents to have access to the water up there. It's kind of an ugly eyesore right now, and everybody gets to see it on when they drive up there for sunset. And it will definitely be an enhancement to the city. Our appearance will be better. The utilization of that area will be better, and our citizens and visitors will be, I think, appreciative of that improvement.
So for clarification for budget, you know, it was caused by some storm damage and age. So your recommendation is to how to pay for this?
To come out of rainy day fund. It'll hopefully be something we will not have to address for 30 or 40 years, given some big boat getting loose and coming over and taking it out. That would be an insurance claim.
Call for a motion.
I'll motion to approve the installation of the bulkhead and pier in the amount of $90,745.00, including the pass-through legacy panels.
I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. Scanlon, second by Ms. Leday for bulkhead and pier to install what their proposal was, including the legacy panels. Any discussion?
Any idea on the duration of time to complete the project?
I don't have an idea, but I think the sooner we can get them on it, better off. I believe that they have the majority of those materials already in stock and should be able to move on it.
Any idea how long they will warranty that product for?
40 years on the composite bulkhead, and I haven't seen the warranty sheet on the pass-through panels. I got a panel to look at and touch, but we have it at the office.
But 40 years on the bulkhead itself?
Yes.
With the
But that's on the material, not the workmanship.
Correct.
So,
Mayor, what is your thought on using the rainy day fund for this? You've been through the budget process 100% more times than anyone else up here, and I'd be curious.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I do have a big concern with that. But at the same time, we have a current pier that's not up to code. That we need to get it up to code, and it was damaged by a storm. So we don't have any outside funds or a grant to allow this to be done. I think it's appropriate for the rainy day fund, but at the same time, we'll reimburse the rainy day fund. Unfortunately, this year, due to COVID and stuff, there is a small amount of shortfall, but I think that's with our taxes increasing, coming in from sales tax, I think we're going to be able to cover that over the next year. Also, the city administrator has exercised some discretion in not doing some other purchases of such things like the backhoe, which could be $40,000 to $70,000 just there. There were some savings on the pool plastering, and I'm off the top of my head, I don't know, Brent, was there anything else you wanted to?
Just trying to be a good steward of, the monies of the city. Try to pull up short on our budgeted items. So, like pool furniture was budgeted higher than what we spent. We've encountered some things also, just some small things, but they always add up that are unexpected. So, when you have for instance, an ice maker here at the clubhouse that we were spending $400 or $500 every 3 months to have them come out and reset it and clean it and put it all together, made the decision to go ahead and get a new ice maker. And I'm glad we did, because the floor underneath that ice maker was deteriorated to the point that I was surprised that the old ice maker didn't fall through it. And so we made that floor repair. We did that internally with the building officials' oversight, and Public Works did a fabulous job of doing that. So we've got a stable floor, and we've got an ice maker that works. And that's not something we take lightly. It's we're approaching summer, but we're also going into storm season, and when people need ice, they usually go over here and take it. So there's just some small things like that have popped up, but also scaling back on some of those larger items that were budgeted for, and we can push those out.
And overall, the city infrastructure is pretty good. I mean, we did a lot of work to get the city hall painted, this clubhouse painted, the roof painted. IT infrastructure is in pretty good shape. I know the police vehicles, we're looking at leasing vehicles instead of purchasing, which could be a big cost savings over the next 3 to 5 years. And they just get the vehicles totally outfitted, and they only have to put a couple decals on them and then or radios, and then they turn them in after 3 years. So there's some savings coming down the road overall.
We are evaluating a lot of different possibilities in an effort to save money, stretch dollars.
Now the police department did just get $13,000. So congratulations
borrow
to the
some
PD
money?
for that, for the poker run and all the people that participated in that. That's awesome. Yeah.
So I only have one concern. I don't want to be the downside of this, but there is a storm out there. Where Harvey came from could possibly come this way. Do we have the funds to do this and not really damage our rainy day that we would use to help clean up this island in a storm right now, since storm season just started?
Yeah, I mean, you got Crowder Golf Online and all that stuff. You wanna?
Yeah, we have all of our contracts are in place, and we confirm them. With our debris management company, of course, we don't pay them until we use them, and then we have a debris monitoring company, same thing. They come in and they confirm that debris. Harvey, as a rain event, primarily, I guess, here, and created a lot of damage. I wasn't here, but I was talking with Kevin, and I thought it was around 400,000 was the total damage on that event, and then we did receive FEMA funds. So we need money to pay out, and then we apply for that reimbursement. And so with our rainy day fund, I believe we're north of $1 million. Without quoting me right now, but we're north of $1 million with that.
Yeah, I thought we were around 1.6.
Yeah, we might. Yeah. So and it's really dependent on the type of storm. But the thing that really is in our favor here, even though all these houses, or the majority of these houses, are elevated, and we have a lot of new construction, is that we have good construction techniques in the way that they're built, the way that things are strapped, and we can minimize, hopefully, severe destruction. We're going to always have low houses that flood, and we're going to have older houses that are constructed differently and have weak points and catch air wrong. But as a community, I think we're in pretty good shape as far as our building codes and our construction techniques. So I think that will go a long way. I do have a lot of dead trees around the perimeter, though, so we need to try to address that. We're trying to stretch our dollars there as well.
Yeah, and that's something that we're looking to hopefully get some EDC funds. We have some bid proposals coming in for that. Come on, Thomas.
So just a question just on the rainy day fund itself. How much would we normally want to keep in there, just like I said, at the beginning of storm season like this, and let's just throw a worst case scenario like another Ike coming through here. That wouldn't just be a rain event, it would be a wind event. I'm just, what do you think would be a good number to make sure that we do keep in there?
I've honestly never been through it, but I think the answer without answering that is as much as possible.
Right.
So, we were trying to guesstimate a damage that I don't have any basis for, and if someone in here does, then feel free to speak up.
Yeah, and the biggest thing about a rainy day fund is it allow those assets to come into the facility, to the city, to get things underway. That way you have those funds available right away. But we get reimbursement for all those submitted back into FEMA. So, that's the biggest thing, is having those available.
Those are tracked costs, and with, like, our first responders, police department, they're going to, in the event of a storm, they complete paperwork, and their costs, their salaries, and all of that are recuperated through that program. So, where this money comes from, I don't know, but that's how the process is.
We still need to have a pretty good chunk in
Yeah.
there up front, just like you said, to cover the costs
Mhm.
initially, and then eventually when the paperwork
Yes.
comes back, we'll be reimbursed for it with that fund. But
And I think with Harvey, it was about a year, I think, to cycle it around, maybe 14 or 15 months by the time it was all over with.
Any further discussion? Did we have a motion? I forget now. It's been a long night already, long day. Alright, we had a motion, that's right, here it is, Mr. Scanlon and Ms. Leday. Alright, no further discussion, we'll take a vote. All in favor, aye. Any opposed, nay? Having none, motion passed unanimously. I believe that's the last item. Yes, item 14 is adjourned at 8:22. Thank y'all. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Yes, I had my hand up earlier.
I'm sorry.
May I ask that
Sure.
publicly before we close? Yes, Kevin, I saw you take the proof from Mr. Johnson, that he had all his proof that his cars were registered. May I submit all my proof that I have every permit for my lower levels being converted from storage space to living space with a certificate of occupancy?
Alright. Yep. Thank y'all. Meeting adjourned.